Right. So when it comes to the service now development, because in the last session we discussed about the introduction about service now, right? So introduction about IT service management. That part we have covered already. Wherein today we are going to discuss about how to create an instances, because how to create instances for the developer studio. At the same time, being a service now developer, we must be proficient enough to uh, create different environments, right? So using IDEs, all that. So first of all, we are learning today about how to create an instances. Instance creation is something that we need to know, right? So here we can see request for instances, right? So we have taken, right? Wherein if you want to choose any kind of request for instances for any kind of releases and all, right? Whatever the release you want, everything that releases can be taken into consideration over here. So that is option number one. Or else if you want to create any kind of APIs, right? So whatever the required APIs we want to create, right? For example, we are using a RESTful API for integration purposes, etc. If you want to create anything of that sort, here we have an option where we can connect to RESTful API so that integration from one application to another application or one among applications can be created using a RESTful API. At the same time, even using different APIs which are available, not only for API RESTful, it can be SOAP API, it can be web APIs for web applications and all. We are using even web APIs, etc. So these can be used. So this also we have to do. Being a service node developer, we have to do that. So these are the few things we need to know, right? So one is about, as I mentioned you, because requesting an instance, right? So requesting for an instance to build any platform application is one of the key things that we need to know with. At the same time, even we can create some RESTful API or its APIs, everything that can be created. So this is where generally we have to create a RESTful API. So when we want to create a RESTful API and all, something first of all we need to know. We have to choose the RESTful API. That is something that we have chosen. Okay, right. So when we want to create an API, etc., it's important for us to understand about few concepts, because being this is from the learning perspective I'm referring to, not for the people who are already working on the service node development. This is not intended for that. Okay, because service node development people have idea over all these, but people who are not from the service node development and who wants to enter into the field of the development part, this is intended for them, right? So intended for them, they must be knowing about the part of integration. As part of integration, RESTful API is one of the key important API that we are using. So in this, there are different APIs we have. Let me explain you one by one. One is about account API, second about account subscription APIs and all, followed by agent client collector aggregate APIs, all these. So every API has its own importance. Let me understand different APIs and all. The first one about account API. Account API is majorly the one which majorly used to provide any kind of endpoints, so that if you want to retrieve any customer account records, for example, you are managing some insurance applications, right? So there are different customer services that we are managing, their policy related stuff, or at the same time it can be relating to the claim related stuff, etc. So if you want to retrieve any customer service account records, etc., so for that account API is being used for. Next, activity subscription API. Activity subscription API majorly provides the required endpoints, so that if you want to retrieve any activity entities, right? So at the same time, from any kind of subscriptions which are already existed already, let's assume that we have already created some subscriptions earlier. Now, if you want to create more subscriptions, or if you want to create any kind of new activity feed frameworks, everything can be done using activity subscription API. So these are the different APIs as far as the REST API is concerned. Depends on the requirement, depends on the type of integration that we are choosing. So whichever API that are to be used and all will be decided. As I stated earlier, for example, if you want to retrieve any customer service account records and all, account API is being used. For any activity subscriptions and all, activity subscription API is being used. Next about agent collector API, right? So agent client collector APIs. These are all when will be used when we want to manage any kind of actions. Because whatever the list of available agents that we create, how to create an agent, how to manage policies. That part, when I'm discussing about the admin part, I'll tell you. Because creating an agent, so at the same time managing policies, this is all comes under the ServiceNow administrative part. From a developer point of view, even we must be having some idea over that as well. So there generally this client collector APIs are being used. Next, aggregate APIs. Aggregate APIs are majorly used when we are trying to understand about whatever the compute aggregate statistics that we are using for the existing table. Assume that we have created a table for account creations when customer service management purposes, IT services related stuff. We have already created some existing tables followed by whatever the column data we have created. So for this, if you want to create any kind of compute aggregate statistics and all, this aggregate API is being used for that regard. Again, I'm repeating for existing tables that we have already there. Okay, not the new existing tables, new tables that we are creating, whatever the existing tables that we have created, or the existing column data which is already there. So if you want to provide any kind of endpoints and all, aggregate API is being used for that. Next, AASet API. This is a new change in service now. Now and then you can see because imparting artificial intelligence by using some different different patterns and as well as algorithms writing is what something that we do. So this AI assets API majorly provide to retrieve any update or any create any kind of different types of AI assets. Either it can be system related stuff or it can be data sets that we are managing or we are doing any kind of prompt related stuff, prompt engineering kind of, or any AI models that we have created. For that, AI API is being, Asset API is being used. Asset API is an add-on thing because I don't advise now and then for developer. As of now, it is not required. But we need to have hands-on experience as a developer service now. Then AI Asset API is more useful to us. Okay, that's what AI Assets API is being used in this regard. Next, AI search external usage mapping because if there is any external usage mapping, we are providing endpoints so that if we want to enable any ingestion for any kind of user mapping information, wherein we want to connect with any kind of external sources. For that purpose, generally AI search external usage mapping we are using. Next, alarming management OPN API. This is majorly to provide endpoints to create and update or retrieving any kind of data from any kind of events that we have created, existing events that we have created, or if you want to create any kind of alert tables, etc. So for that, alarm management OPN API is being used. Next one about AP invoice API. AP invoice API majorly used to create some kind of endpoints wherein by using any kind of vendors, if you want to manage any kind of secure submit invoices, or if you want to create any kind of account payable systems, when we are managing the structuring as well as automating manner. So for that API invoice API is being used here. Next, application service. This is one of the important and common API that we use because whenever you want to enable, whenever you want to create, modify, or update any application services, which is a basic thing, okay, which is a basic being a service node developer when we are working on. When you want to create, modify, or update any application services, the application service API is being used. Next, appointment API. Appointment API majorly provide endpoints for any kind of interaction we are doing, especially for appointment booking applications, or if you want to reschedule any appointments, or if you want to check any availability of appointment slots, or if you want to fetch any appointment booking for configuration. Because it's not only about the integration part, one must be having some idea over the configuration part also, because making some changes on the existing fields or creating any kind of new workflows to the existing ones. That kind of understanding is also needed for a developer. In that regard, so this is something that can be used here. Okay, because if you want to make any configuration, field level configurations, or workflow level configurations, or data model level configurations when we are doing. For that purpose, appointment API is being used for that. Next, appointment open API, because this is in add-on to the existing API that we create. because to differentiate as well as to allow any kind of interaction with any kind of appointment for booking applications, right? So for that purpose, Open API is being used in this. Next, attachment API. Attachment API will provide you major endpoints to us so that if you want to allow or if you want to upload any kind of query file attachments. So for that, attachment API is being used. Next, Automation Center API. Automation Center API majorly provides endpoints for any data related relating to robots, because now and then, as I told you, we are implementing artificial intelligence, we are implementing some patterns to that. So when we are implementing robots, we are initiating robots to process and execution of the regular day-to-day activities when we are using by imparting artificial intelligence into that. So Automation Center API, that we can use it so that we can integrate and reflect what are the details that are required for automation purposes, for workflows, etc. For that, generally, Auto Center API is being used in this regard. Next, AW Agent API. This is for work assignment purposes, which is not necessarily important in the present grounds. Even AWA inbox actions API is also not so integrated, or at the same time, manual assignment APIs and all not needed. Next important API is about batch APIs. This is even important because if you want to create any batches, okay, so if you want to provide any endpoints for any single request containing any kind of multiple REST API calls, or if you want to return any kind of stream responses, payloads, etc. So for that, batch API is being used here. This is one of the key and important API that we use, right? So batch API is being used majorly. So this is one of the key API that we are using here. Next, about the case API. Case API majorly for customer service records when we are managing. So for that, case API is used. And media resource API is not so needed. CDM applications API and all that. So these are all not needed. There were many. But next one is about change management API. I am specifying important ones, okay, because there were many in list, but I am referring a few which are important. Chain management API is also needed because any third-party application integration from ServiceNow to Jira or Jira to ServiceNow, right? So ServiceNow, you are integrating with Rally or any kind of Azure DevOps. So you are integrating with any third-party applications and all for chain management process. Chain management API, we can use it. Even CI, continuous integration lifecycle management, can also used so that we can integrate with any kind of manipulating any kind of configuration items or any kind of operational states or applying any kind of CA action, CA/CD pipelines. Let's say that we are using Azure DevOps, right? So that time continuous integration, deployment, and delivery will be taken place. So that time this CA lifecycle management is being used in this regard. Next, cloud runner test generation API. This is even required when we are going for cloud applications, etc. So this cloud runner test runner generation API and test runners are being used in this part. So this is all about the cloud service catalog APIs we are using. In that regard, that will be used. Next, one of the important thing about contact API. This is even important because if you want to enable or if you want to retrieve any customer service contact records, and the contact API is important because all the APIs are not so required in the field of live environment when we are working on. Few things are important. The reason why I'm explaining few things. Even contact API is also needed for us. Continuous integration CACD, this is even, but make sure when we are going for Azure DevOps, right? So when we are using Jenkins or any kind of Azure pipelines, Azure DevOps we use, right? So or else it can be any GitLab to maintain the code. Okay, so any GitHub for code repositories. And Bamboo normally we use for Atlassian Bamboo, we are using for release management, we are using it. So even for that, because if you want to do the phase-wise releases, etc., so we have to create a pipeline for CI/CD. So for that also, this API we can use it for CI/CD purpose, etc. All that. Next, data classification is even important because data classification majorly to group any kind of data by type. Okay, so for that data classification API also we are using. DevOps API, as just now I told you, right? So when we are creating a DevOps environment, when we have a DevOps environment in the real world, if you want to create for that, generally DevOps API can be used even for that also. Next, these are all not needed, which are listed on the code set. Install base not needed, all this. Omni-channel is one more required because some both authentications, authorizations, both 2.1. And one. That time this omni-channel callback APIs we use. And these are not needed. There were many, but not required. Yeah, that's it. Right. So these are all major APIs that we use for integration purposes from the developer point of view. One must be good. This is what generally we are learning.